Hey guys, I'm Bobby Tuttle, Scrumhalf of the Queensland Reds, and you're listening to the Physical Performance Show.
And the winner is...
Failure is not an option.
I've had my ups and my downs.
I think it's an absolutely breakthrough experience.
Welcome to the Physical Performance Show, the show designed to inspire the pursuit of your physical best performance. I'm your host, Brad Beer. Listen in as we delve into how the world's top physical performers achieve their success, as well as the highs, the lows, and the journey of getting there. Let's get ready, set, let's go. Welcome back, or welcome to the Physical Performance Show, brought to you by the Gold Coast Marathon and Pogo Physio. Each week we'll bring you a variety of episodes ranging from featured performers through to coaches' corners, interest editions and expert editions. And on today's episode, I bring you a conversation that I recently had with Queensland Reds Rugby Union scrum half James "Bobby" Jimmy Tuttle. By way of bio, James Tuttle first debuted for the Queensland Reds in the Super Rugby Australian League in 2016. Prior to that, in 2015, James had shown enormous promise by captaining Australia in the under-20s to the World Rugby Championships held in Italy. And on today's episode, James shares with us the highs, the lows, and the learnings from his career to date. And James is in a very unique situation to share around the lows of sport. Only a matter of weeks prior to recording, James suffered a re-rupture of his recently repaired Achilles tendon. That's right, a re-rupture, 1 centimetre higher than the previous Achilles tendon repair. So this is a really fascinating insight into the world of professional sport and the psychology of injury. Here is my conversation with James "Bobby" Jimmy Tuttle, Queensland Reds scrum half. Let's jump right in. Jimmy "Bobby" Tuttle, welcome to the Physical Performance Show.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks for having me on.
This is a tough phase in your career, having recently re-ruptured your Achilles tendon. Before we go into that in any detail, though, Bobby, what's one thing that you're learning at the moment?
Probably it's around that. It's dealing with setbacks. Obviously, 5 months into my initial recovery from my first rupture, and unfortunately re-rupturing it 2 weeks ago is something that I've had to deal with, pretty quickly over these last 2 weeks. But I've made my dues with that, and I've put that to the back of my mind, and I'm just looking forward to the next little process of the recovery.
Yeah, so to be clear, it's a re-rupture of an already surgically repaired Achilles tendon rupture that happened in October 2018, and then just 3 weeks ago, at the day of recording today, you re-ruptured it. So how did you re-rupture it? What were you doing at the time?
Yeah, so it was pretty routine, and I was just doing tippy-toe walks, something that I'd been doing for 3 weeks during my rehab process with the side up at Ballymore with the Reds. So yeah, it was quite interesting. Initially, we didn't think that it was the tendon. There was no pain associated with it, just a loud sort of noise. And I could still walk and still had some plantar flexion strength and things like that. So when saw the doc, and she sort of didn't really like the look of it, and then went and got scans later that arvo, ultrasound, and then an MRI, and then the MRI showed what was it, a re-rupture, a new rupture, not the same rupture from the initial surgery, which is a bit interesting as well. So was off to see the surgeon later that arvo, and then booked in for surgery the following day. Yeah,
wow. And so to be clear, again, that was a different part of the Achilles tendon that, so technically it's a second rupture rather than, I guess, in some ways a re-rupture technically in terms of location, but it was about 1 centimetre higher, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, just above the initial rupture. So yeah, it's probably a new rupture. So obviously very disappointing. Was sort of nearing a finish line, or I could see that finish line within the coming months, and obviously a major setback. But it's obviously not a new injury for myself. I know the process and I know what to expect over this first little bit where you can't leave the house too much. Obviously right foot again, which hurts. I can't drive, which was pretty tough last time. Couldn't drive for 3 months, which made things a bit more difficult. So, but yeah, on the mend and, surgery went well and things like that. So I'm just set up for a real good comeback now, which will be great.
But you're 5 months into a comprehensive rehabilitation program, and you do effectively learn to walk again after that sort of surgery, and then it happens again. How did the first one happen? Rewinding the clock back to October 2018. What was that one like?
Yeah, so the first one just happened during a game. It was about the 7th minute into a game. So a ball popped out from the back of a ruck, and playing halfback, I stand behind the ruck and dove for the ball to jump on the loose pill. And as I took off, it just went and just felt like no pain or anything like that. Just felt like someone kicked me in the back of my calf, and was lying on the ground and looked around but couldn't see anyone behind me. Physio and doc came over and, got me to try and stand up. And as soon as I stood up, the foot was just floppy, and tried to put some weight down on the ground, and the foot was completely numb. So hobbled off, and then they did a Thompson test at halftime, which pretty much said that the Achilles was done. And was booked in for surgery the next day again when that happened. So no pain associated, as I said, with the first one. I know some people can say that it's quite painful, and I initially thought it was going to be something that would be quite painful doing it, but the first time didn't have any pain, and the second time, funnily enough, didn't have any pain associated with the rupture either. So it was a bit interesting. And
did you have any active tendon pain leading into it? Any tendinopathy type of stuff, or was it just normal business for you?
Yeah, normal business. So we had no issues with calf tightness. We obviously do all our testing each day in at Ballymore with the Reds. So my needle walls were fine, and no tendon issues or histories of any tendinopathy or things like that. So it was one of those things that was just out of the blue, and someone at my age, being 22 and early on in the game, it didn't really have all the telltale signs of your typical Achilles injuries, older or later in your career, or tight calves and issues with the tendons prior. So I think it was pretty much bad luck.
And you get told your Achilles is ruptured, you're going to need surgery. How do you first process that? As a 22-year-old, fit as a fiddle, professional athlete.
Yeah, it was quite tough to comprehend. We were playing in a semi-final at the time, and we went on to win that, which was great. And obviously, initial disappointment not being able to be out there with your teammates and then go and play in the grand final was tough in itself. But an Achilles injury is quite a tough injury. A teammate of mine did it 2 years prior, and just to see what he had to go through his recovery and rehab, it's not a straightforward rehab program and process to recovery. So I was obviously very disappointed, and was glad to get surgery done the next day, just so I could get into the healing and get back into pre-season. And obviously I was at that stage still had a goal in mind of being able to play Super Rugby this year, with how the calendar worked and things like that. So obviously had a big goal in mind of coming back this season, and unfortunately that hasn't been able to happen due to the second injury 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and it must be crushing to know that you've re-ruptured it. Like, it must just feel like you're just falling into the earth. Is it that sort of feeling?
Yeah, this one was really tough. Before the ultrasound, our team doc said, you'll get an ultrasound first, and then if it doesn't look too good, they'll make you go upstairs and get an MRI. Message me straight away if they tell you to get an MRI. So went into the ultrasound. That was all straightforward, and then they said you'll have to be going straight upstairs for an MRI. So at that stage, I sort of knew that it wasn't going to be too good, and then came out of the MRI and had 2 missed calls straight away from our doc, trying tried calling her back. She didn't pick up because she was on the phone to the surgeon at the time. So I'd driven home from the hospital, about 10-minute ride, and then she finally calls me back and unfortunately tells me the news that I'd re-ruptured my Achilles, and tried to stay pretty strong to her on the phone. And then when I hung up, I just lost it. Broke down on my way to the surgeon's office, just because I knew what I'd gone through over the past 5 months, and what this could potentially mean going forward and things like that. So that was probably one of the hardest days of my life so far. That 15-minute car ride by myself to the surgeon's office after just being given the news that I'd re-ruptured my Achilles again.
Would that be the darkest day in your professional sporting life to date, Bobby?
Yeah, 100%. I just remember it so vividly. The emotion, not normally too much of an emotional person, but given that information and what I'd gone through initially from the first one, it really tore me to pieces.
And we started our time together. You said the thing that you're learning is dealing with setbacks. So, in this last 3 weeks, which has been this, coming to terms with starting again, in many ways, what are you specifically learning? What have you learnt about how to deal with setbacks in the last few weeks, Jimmy?
Yeah, for me, it's probably been, as I said, I've gone through the process already, so I know now what to expect. I think it's more just a thing of being able to stay motivated through it, and probably not just a motivation by itself, but building in habits and processes to be able to sustain that motivation through the next 9 months. I think it'll be something that I've been learning at the moment, and motivation comes and goes. So I think for me, the biggest thing will be creating new habits and new processes to sustain that motivation, especially over the next couple of months, but throughout the rest of the year as well during the rehab process. So new ways to deal with motivation, the ebbs and flows of it, because obviously it comes and goes differently for different individuals, and it's something that I'm going to have to keep up, as I said, over the next year, definitely.
And any specific habit or process that you have created in the last few weeks that's helped you with your motivation, Bobby?
Nothing too much at this stage. I'm still stuck at home, and we'll probably start going back into training to do some gym work as of tomorrow or the next day. But I think a big thing for me is being positive, and I was reading somewhere the other day about a little quote that I've been using at the moment. It says, you can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. So I think for me that's that hits home pretty hard. I've had to just deal with what's happened and not waste too much stressful energy and thinking on that, and rather look forward to what I can change, and I can rewrite my own story pretty much.
And the ending for yourself, Bobby, what does the ending look like for you? Getting back to Super Rugby, Queensland Reds level, and beyond?
Yeah. So that's all I'm working back to, and that's been my goal. That was my goal this year. Unfortunately, I'll have to wait another year until next year. So, that's 100% the goal, and that'll happen through hard work and dedication. But this time next year, this season next year, I'll hopefully be, running around at Suncorp, and that's definitely firmly in the front of my mind, in the back of my mind, and that's what I'll be thinking about during every tough session, every good session, and everything in between.
Jimmy, where did this rugby union career start for you? Can you rewind the clock? What was life like growing up, and how did you first run onto a field?
Yeah, so it was pretty active as a child. Grew up in Brizzy, lived here my whole life, and at primary schools put my hand up to do almost everything. Enjoyed track and field in the back end of primary school, as well as rugby league and AFL. So I played Queensland in under 12 level for AFL and rugby league, as well as long jump in the track and field side of things, and went pretty well at national levels in all three of them, and then graduated primary school and went through to Nudgee College where I did my high school. And that's pretty much where, my love for football was growing. Rugby union, especially at that school, it's well renowned for producing a very high level of rugby union players. And my brother and I were lucky enough to do our schooling out there, and it's taught me, a lot about a person and as a rugby player doing my 5 years of high school at Nudgee. Went through there and played Aussie schoolboys in year 12. We had a great tour to the UK and Ireland in year 12, which opened up, what the next few years were going to be like. Had to miss out on schoolies due to the trip, which was fine. It was pretty tough at the time, but in the end it worked out. 5 weeks in the UK and Ireland was much better than a week at schoolies. So finished school and then went into the under-20s program they had at the Reds back in those days, and did 2 years of Australian under-20s, and that's a great tournament. You go to the World Cup each year in the under-20s level, and I was lucky enough to captain Australia in my last year in 2016, which was a great honour. We played over in Manchester, and it was surreal to be able to captain guys at my age group across the country and represent Australia so well. That's probably a little backstory to my life growing up. Obviously, still young, so there's still a lot to be written. Yeah,
absolutely. And at what point, Jimmy, did you believe or start to realise that you had some legitimate talent and you really had a potential professional career in front of you? Was there a moment, or was there a series of events? When did you really start to believe that was possible for yourself?
Probably year 11. That's when rugby starts to get a bit more serious in the GPS schools in Brizzy. So played first 15 in year 11 and then again in year 12 and captained in year 12. So probably year 11 in year 12 first. That's when you sort of got to make a decision. Am I going to have a real red hot crack at this, or look to do something else? And that's where I put my time and effort into, along with my studies. But rugby was definitely something I wanted to make a career out of, and obviously you don't have your whole life to do it. So we went pretty hammer and tong in year 12 and the first couple of years out of school to make sure that that dream would become a reality.
And when you say we, you mean yourself, your parents, or your team around you?
Yeah, parents were pretty helpful with that sort of thing. But myself and probably more so myself, and then the sides we're involved with. But as it is a team sport, a lot of it does come down to the individual and things that they're doing to get themselves better. So had a great support system around me. My brother played Broncos under 20s for 2 years. He's 15 months older than me, and he played a year with me at the Reds as well before giving it in due to injury. So he was someone I always looked up to, and he was probably always a bit better than me through school at footy. So it was always a bit of competition did I put on myself to be better than him at rugby.
And did your brother have any brotherly words of encouragement to you after this recent re-rupture?
No, I live with him, but he's not too emotional either. He just said he feels for me. He's had a heap of injuries. I think he did his shoulder 4 times and did a medial once in the 4 or 5 years after leaving school. So he's definitely been there and done that injury-wise.
Yeah, so at least there's that commonality there as housemates, let alone brothers. And then, Jimmy, your debut for the Super Rugby with the Reds, I believe, was there in 2016. Can you remember the moment, putting the jersey on, running out for the first time?
Yeah, it was great. We were over in South Africa at the time, so I was in the tour squad to go over there, and sort of knew there was only 2 halfbacks going, so I sort of knew I'd be making my debut that week. But first time playing for the Reds was a childhood dream, to play professionally and to represent the Reds, the side that I'd grown up watching, obviously being a Brizzy boy. And we played over in Loftus in Pretoria in South Africa, and at altitude and things like that. It was hard enough being a 19-year-old debuting at that age, but then you add in South African sides away and at altitude, just made it all the more memorable. So, but yeah, a massively proud moment for myself and my family. And yeah, it was just a great experience being over there and playing with guys, you grew up watching at Red level and at Wallaby level as well. So, yeah, probably one of the better sporting moments of my career so far.
What would you rate, Jimmy, as your athletic highlight, the highest day of your athletic career to date, and why?
Yeah, there's probably a few. So obviously making your debut at a professional level, captaining Australia at under 20 level, although it's an underage competition, was still massive for me, and being able to represent everyone in this great nation was something that was I really enjoyed. Yeah, probably making my debut, I'd say. But all that, in saying that, each game is just as special as the debut, being able to represent Queensland. I'm, a proud Queenslander. So, but yeah, if I had to put one, I'd say the debut. Yeah.
You're listening to James Tuttle, Queensland Reds scrum half, sharing around the highs, the lows, and the learnings of his career to date. Support for today's show comes from the Gold Coast Marathon. Just like the Physical Performance Show, the Gold Coast Marathon encourages runners of all ages and abilities to push their boundaries and strive to complete a personal challenge. The Gold Coast Marathon is held annually on the first weekend in July and is a must-do event for any budding athlete, weekend warrior, or family looking for a challenge to complete together. Run for the good times at the Gold Coast Marathon. Visit goldcoastmarathon.com.au. Support for today's show also comes from Pogo Physio. We exist to help you get back to your physical best following injury. We want everyone who walks through the doors of Pogo Physio to complete their rehabilitation, get back to their physical best, and in doing so, cross their physio finish line. To find out more about Pogo Physio's unique services, including our award-winning fixed-fee rehabilitation options, including our very popular monthly wellness booster packs, or our 1-hour initial appointment, jump over to pogophysio.com.au. For now, let's jump back with James Tuttle, Queensland Reds rugby union scrum half, sharing around his highs, lows, and learnings of his career to date. Jimmy, we talk about the highs, the lows, and the learnings. Let's throw into a performance round with some rapid fire questions. You ready?
Yeah, ready.
Training session you most dislike?
Yeah, probably anything pre-season running and contact conditioning. We do a lot of, tackle and wrestling, and, it's not too fun.
Can you put us in perspective with a typical pre-season for the Queensland Reds? When does it start? How long does it go for? What things are involved?
Yeah, so we start 4 weeks before Christmas. We have 4 weeks off at the end of the NRC competition, which, runs to October, and then we have 4 weeks off. And then we get stuck into it. And weekly, it's Monday to Friday with a half day on a Wednesday. So we'll do, a few meetings in the morning on a Monday, and then we'll have a heavier field conditioning session. And then we'll go into gym. And then we pretty much repeat that Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, just with some days being heavier than the other. And then Wednesday will be an extras day where the boys will do either off-feet conditioning or boxing or a bit of bike, along with kicking. So it's pretty intense. We've had a change though in the last 2 seasons with S&C staff, and this year we're running a lot less kilometres throughout the whole week, but they're at a higher level. So, for example, pre-season last year, we'd be probably doing, for my position, halfback, we run a lot more than most of the other boys. We're probably doing 30, 32 kilometre weeks. And now this year the boys have been doing about 18 kilometre weeks. So there's a massive difference in, the load on the legs, but they've been doing it at a higher level, and we do it it's called like a worst case scenario training. So they've looked at the GPS stats from previous years to see where the highest meters per minute are covered throughout a game, and we'll do far in excess of that, just so when we do get to game time, we can cope with the standards of that. So, for the inside backs and outside backs, they'll probably be doing between 300 and 350 metres on the 60 seconds. So probably nothing to, what a lot of the runners do that you get on the show. But for us, it's pretty tough. And then you mix in, contact conditioning and things like that. It builds a lot of lactate in the legs, and it makes for a tough session.
Yeah, absolutely. And so across this pre-season, you might be in the the weights room in the gym, strength and conditioning work. How many times a week?
So we'll do that 4 times in the gym, 4 times on the field, and that's built in of longer conditioning stuff, shorter speed stuff, and power stuff in the gym as well. So 4 days with a half day on the Wednesday, and then Saturday, Sunday to your own leisure. So, and along with that, Thorny, our head coach, likes to put in an army camp. We did our second one this year, and the boys definitely do not enjoy that at all.
That's an army camp, did you say, Bobby?
Yeah, army camp, yeah. So we did our first one last year at Enoggera Barracks, and this year we were down the coast at Canungra. So you do 3 days, 2 nights. You get about 2 hours sleep over the whole 3 days. This year, though, because we were a bit closer to the start of the season, we were allowed to eat. We got three 10 minutes of eating a day. So, but that's just bread and baked beans. So last year we ate twice over the 3 days, which was a lot tougher. But the boys were a bit more ready for it this year, and they knew what to expect. But nonetheless, it's still bloody tough when you're not sleeping. The army dudes are yelling at you. It can get pretty tough. But obviously, it's there for a reason, and it's trying to push boys outside of their comfort zone and see how they react, and get us closer as a team, and understanding that. We can't do things individually, and it's got to take a team effort to get the job done. So I think that's, one of the main reasons Thorny likes to put those things in. But, they're not fun at all, and the boys dread it.
Yeah, and, one of our former guests, Dan Pronk, former SAS, Special Air Services doctor, he said there's such a bond in suffering. People really bond when they're mutually suffering together. So I guess that's such an element of that army training preparation, yeah?
Yeah, it's something that, you always dread and you hate while you're doing it. But you look back on it and you say, yeah, there's some benefit in that. And, we did get closer as a group. And it's something you can always, look back on and say, I achieved that. So whatever I'm going through at the moment might not seem as tough or as hard. You can draw back on those experiences to help you get through it.
Yeah, no, great. And that pre-season, before we throw back to the performance round, will run for how many weeks?
Yeah, so we'll do 4 weeks before Christmas, then have about 10 days off around Christmas, New Year's, and then get back in for another 4 weeks. Because our union season starts pretty early. I think we started at mid-February this year. It's usually late February, but a week earlier with the World Cup on later this year. So, so it's about 8 weeks in total, which is not too bad.
Yeah, got it. Back on the performance round, Bobby, training session you most love?
Most love, probably an individual skills day where we can do kicking. I'm a goal kicker, so I love getting out there and spending a bit of time by myself and putting a few balls over the crossbar.
Brilliant. How many balls might you put over the bar in a kicking session?
It depends on, day to day. A lot of the sports scientists get a bit iffy nowadays with how much you can kick and things like that. But, for myself, I think more the better, as long as you're hitting them well. It can range from anywhere probably between 30 plus. But some of that isn't directly kicking at the post. It could be working just on the ball strike across the field. So, it's broken down into, smaller skills to benefit the end goal.
Yeah, got it. Pre-match meal, what fuels you?
I like to do a lot of my eating earlier in the day. A lot of our kick-off times are around 7:30, so they're pretty long days. So I'll eat a big brekkie and a big lunch, and then have a pre-match meal probably about 3 hours before kickoff, but that's a bit lighter, maybe one wrap, with a bit of chicken on it, or if I want to feel a bit lighter during the game, I'll probably just have a few muesli bars and some bananas. So as long as I know I've got the fuel in earlier in the day, I can sort of back end, lighten off at the back end of the day before kick-off.
Yeah, and as you say, it's often a late kick-off. Bedtime, morning time, what's that look like during the pre-season and then the competition phase?
Yeah, so pre-season will probably be in bed around 9:30ish, probably trying to knock off around 10. I like my sleep, and it's something that I've tried to improve as the years have gone by. So probably about in bed 9:30, and then during pre-season we were up at 5 or 5:30 to get into training for a 6 o'clock start. So get enough sleeping in that time.
Yeah, got it. 6 a.m. is an early start, isn't it, for pre-season? Who is the athlete that you most admire and why, Bobby?
Oh, athlete I most admire. Maybe. So at the moment, I like following my NBA, and DeMarcus Cousins is coming back from an Achilles injury, and Kobe's had his issues with his Achilles, and he came back from that. So probably one of those two at the moment. Given my current circumstance and seeing what they've been able to do to get back to play at a world-class level, which is the NBA.
Who's the union player that you first aspired to be like as a kid at Nudgee College?
Yeah, okay. So probably growing up, I probably watched a bit more league, to be honest. George Gregan was always one union-wise, though, playing halfback. He was someone that I always looked up to. And then later on during my high school career, Will Genia at the Reds, he's down at the Rebels. It was a pretty good moment last year getting to verse him. So, but league-wise, I love growing up and watching Darren Lockyer. I thought he was unreal for the Broncos.
Is there a toughest player you've ever played with? Who would that be and why? Being
a team sport, I'll probably look more at oppositions. Any of the New Zealand sides over there, they're pretty red hot. They're clinical, and it's a tough place to play in New Zealand. Also, the South African sides over there, you never really get the best rub of the green, referee-wise as well. So it makes for a tough spot to play. Individually playing against TJ Perenara, he plays for the All Blacks and the Hurricanes in New Zealand, Scrumhalf. He's a competitor in every sense of the word, and he's probably been my toughest opponent so far. Toughest teammate I've played with. Carmichael Hunt, he used to play Broncos and he played up here for a couple of seasons, and now he's down at the New South Wales Waratahs. And for a back, I've never seen someone hit so hard and carry the ball back as hard in attack, and I just love watching him play at the moment. I love watching him play for the Broncos when I grew up, so probably Carmichael.
Yeah, no, nice. Is there a mantra, Jimmy, that you use when you're playing or training for that matter? Is there some regular self-talk that you've got going on?
Probably one is rest at the end and not in the middle. Whether that's during my gym session or on the field, if I need to keep moving, I can just think of that and, know I got to keep the legs ticking over or, get to my next thing that I need to do in the gym. So, rest at the end, not in the middle.
Best recovery tip?
Food and sleep for me. Got to do the basics right. If you can get your sleep right, that helps a lot of things. Obviously, I like to do some hot and cold contrast as well. And for me, something that's good for the mind, because we talk a lot about physical recovery and things like that, but mental recovery I think is just as important. So whether that's being around friends or having a beer post match might not be the best thing physically, but if you're ticking a box mentally as well, it can be just as beneficial.
Yeah, that social time, hot cold protocol. That piqued my interest. What sort of protocols would you use typically for your hot-cold contrast?
We've got 2 cold baths and a hot bath in it at Ballymore. So the hot one sits around 40 and the 2 cold ones are about 15 and 10. So depending on the type of session you've had, if you've done a heavy running session and a contact session, you'll do your contrast. So you'll be either minute in each, keep contrasting, or 2 minutes, 5 minutes, depending on what the boys can take. So for me, I prefer to do a bit longer in each, so it might be 5 minute hot and cold contrast for about half an hour. that usually does the trick for me.
How would you describe Bobby being in the zone?
In the zone. So I think for me that's probably something I've actually done a bit of reading on recently. Read about 3 or 4 different books on, being in the zone or being mindful, I suppose, as an athlete. And for me, I sort of think of it like it's a bit of a superpower. As an athlete, being in the zone, it's something that you're not thinking about anything else. You're not necessarily even thinking about what you're doing on the field. It's just happening naturally. And I've been trying to do a bit of mindfulness to practice that staying in the zone and not getting distracted by things like that. But yeah, I think it's something that you're not thinking, you're not worried about outcomes, you're not worried about the play before or what's coming up next. It's purely in the moment, and like I said, I think it's a bit of a superpower.
When was the last time, Jimmy, you were in that zone?
Probably it comes and goes, and that's probably something I've been trying to, get a bit more consistency of continually being in the zone. I had a really good season in 2017 where I started off the season on the bench, but about 4 games in, got the starting position and held that for the most of the year with the Reds. So that year for me felt like everything was just happening really naturally, and there was not too much stress involved around performance, wins or losses and things like that. So I probably think that season.
Yeah, fantastic. And finally, in the performance round here, Jimmy, what's the hardest session you've ever done?
The army camps are probably up there. Just some of the stuff you have to do on them, like and to top it all off, you're under fatigue at the time, minimal sleep, major stress, I should say. Carrying blokes on stretcher beds, carrying jerry cans. We did one session actually on the army camp. They woke us up at 3 a.m. It would have been about 2 or 3 a.m. with gunshots and things like that. So it frightens the hell out of you straight away. And then we were down on the field and we had like a 15-kilo metal bar, and we were in lines of 4 and we had to follow what the instructors were doing in front of us. So that was overhead press, bicep curl, tricep extension, and I guess the bar raises out in front, and started off 10 reps, went up to 20, 30, then started going back down and doing burpees and in between that. And at 3 a.m. off minimal sleep and food, a few boys were throwing up. It made for pretty tough times.
Wow. Jimmy, you are out of the performance round, so well done. You can chalk that up as a session for the day. You're listening to Jimmy Tuttle, Queensland Reds scrum half, sharing around the highs, the lows, and the learnings of his career to date. If you missed last week's episode, it was an expert edition featuring Assistant Professor of Biomedical Sciences at Bond University, Dr. Christian Moreau. We explored all things physiology of muscles, anatomy, and the brain, and peak performance.
We actually find that about a quarter of our energy intake per day goes into the human brain. Now, this is big. If we consume 2,000 calories a day, 500 calories will end up, kilocalories will end up in the brain. But 25%, will end up in the human brain, which is very, very difficult to feed.
To tune into the full episode featuring Dr. Christian Moreau, be sure to jump over to the archives and enjoy the episode. Whilst there, also peruse the archives dating right back to episode 1 featuring surf lifesaving Ironman champion Ali Day. For now, let's jump back with James Tuttle, Queensland Reds rugby union scrum half, on his highs, lows and learnings. I'm going to ask you 2 questions on one bit of advice. And the first is, for anyone listening in that's really doing it tough with an injury, they're frustrated, perhaps it's been a recurrence of a pre-existing injury or it's a new injury. They're not necessarily a professional athlete, perhaps they are, but it's just stopping them getting to or being at their physical best. What would your one piece of advice, Jimmy, be to anyone in that situation?
I think it is a tough situation to be in. Obviously, guys and girls that love competing or love going out for runs on the weekend, injuries can hamper that. I suppose the thing is, it's not going to last. Not always going to last. So there's always going to be a light at the end of the tunnel. And if you have patience, something I saw that you posted last night on your Instagram pages, patience is the key. Not getting too hard on yourself and down in the dumps. Having a positive mindset is something that helped me initially through the first recurrence of the Achilles. So staying positive, and finding happiness in, everything that you do throughout the day can go a long way.
That's great. Thanks for sharing, and you're certainly qualified to speak on that, Jimmy. And what would be your single piece of advice to help listeners of the show perform at their physical best?
Performing at your best, I suppose. Doing a little bit each day, making sure you're looking after yourself as well, because you can always train so hard, but if you're not doing the right things in recovery, injuries can flare up and things like that. So making sure you look after yourself physically and mentally as well. It's something I've looked to improve on, is my mental well-being and happiness. And I see that there's a direct correlation between when I'm happy and enjoying things and how I'm performing on the field as well.
Yeah, so good. And, you mentioned before the importance of social interaction, in your case, having a beer at the end of a game or whatever it might be. Jimmy, a fun question, the personality question before you issue the physical challenge for the week. 3 people at a dinner table, living or past, who would be at James, Jimmy, Bobby Tuttle's dinner table and why?
Okay, for me, probably either Kobe Bryant or LeBron James. Both masters of their field, and I think Kobe would have some good stories, especially for what I'm going through at the moment with my Achilles, and I think LeBron would as well. They're both worldwide figures, and they've been so dominant for so long. Obviously, Kobe's retired now, but LeBron's still showing how good he can be. After being in the league for so many years. Secondly, I'd probably go Will Ferrell. I love watching his movies. I think he's hilarious, and I reckon he'd be really good to have, at a dinner table, and he would keep the table on edge. And probably my last one, Tiger Woods. He'd have some sensational stories. A guy that's been at the peak of his sport and at the complete lows of his sport as well, with everything that he went through off the course. I'm sure he'd have some sensational stories to tell.
It'd be an interesting table, that's for sure. What's on your bucket list, Jimmy? What are you looking to? What are the ultimate targets, goals?
Yeah, okay. For me at the moment, get back to full strength and to play for the Reds next year. That was something I put down as my New Year's resolution for this year. Unfortunately, as we said earlier, that'll have to wait another year, but that's okay. So I can't look too far ahead given the current circumstances. So for me, it's just doing everything right and everything that I can over the next 12 months to put me in a position to be back out on that field with my teammates next year. It's something I could really look forward to, and hopefully when that day comes, it'll be something I can look back on, with extremely fond memories.
Yeah, and it'll all be worthwhile, all the arduous and the challenges. And on the challenges, what is your physical challenge, Jimmy, to listeners going to be for the week?
Okay, for me, it might not be a physical one in a sense, but trying to get to bed, about an hour or half an hour earlier each night. A lot where that can be given with current circumstances for individuals and things like that. But I think sleep's probably something that we don't put too much of an emphasis on recovery wise and just for the general well-being. So if you can try and get to bed half an hour or an hour earlier each night, I'm sure that you'll be able to see some differences within yourself and within your training and your physical performance.
No, that's a great one, Jimmy. Well done. Jimmy, finish these sentences. The most important thing in life is?
Happiness. Finding happiness in something that you're doing, whether that's work or relationships or fun with your mates. I think happiness is crucial.
Where does pressure come from?
Both internally and externally, but I think it's driven from ourselves. It's probably through our own perception of a threat that our worries come from. So whether that's missing a kick or not getting the time right, or not making the team, we perceive those ourselves. So if we can control those things internally, I think those pressures can leave.
What's the difference between a great coach and a good coach?
I think the difference there would be the great coaches can talk to you on an individual level rather than just being a coach. They can talk to you as a mate, and they can find out whether you're struggling with things or you're not feeling your best day to day. I've noticed that over the good coaches and the great coaches that I've been involved with, they can talk to you like they're just a mate rather than a coach telling you what to do each day.
What mistakes are you afraid of making finally, Jimmy?
Mistakes, I'd probably say wasting an opportunity. I think for myself, being in a professional sporting environment at rugby, we can't play forever, and there's a time limit on how long you can do this for. So that's probably something that I've come to a realisation of over the past 6 months during this injury. It's something that can't be around forever. So I think, not wanting to waste this opportunity that I've got in front of me.
And Jimmy, it sounds like you are, doing everything you can to get back to your best there with a great team around you. And certainly myself and the listeners will be wishing you all the best on the journey. And on that, how and where can we follow your journey, Jimmy?
Yes, I just got my Instagram page back up and running at the start of my initial injury. So that's at Bobby Tuttle, BOBBY TUTTLE. So you can follow me there for everything Achilles rehab over the next 9 to 12 months.
Jimmy Tuttle, thank you for your time and for popping onto the Physical Performance Show.
No worries, Brad. Thanks for having me.
So there you have it, another episode of the Physical Performance Show. And if you enjoyed today's episode, then be sure to let James know. You can find James easily over on Instagram, as James shared, at Bobby Tuttle, that's BOBBYTUTTLE. I'd also love to know what it was that you enjoyed about the show, or perhaps you have feedback on how we can make the Physical Performance Show better. I'm at Brad_Beer. Of course, keep the show tagged into any posts or podsies, screenshots of the favourite episode that you're enjoying at any given moment at Physical Performance Show. A massive thanks to those of you who have subscribed to the Physical Performance Show. Subscribing really is the gold standard way to help the show grow. And we have had a momentous run in terms of listenership, having just passed a record month of 30,000 downloads for the show and having just passed a total of 500,000 downloads of the program. So a massive thank you for tuning in and your support. And certainly, if you've enjoyed, say, more than 4 episodes, then please consider hitting subscribe and getting them uploaded each and every week to your favourite podcast player. Big thanks this week to show listener Ashley Foote. Ashley rated the show 5 stars, commenting, "I love listening to the Physical Performance Show and the guests, not only because of the high quality of guests, but also because of the show host and Brad's credibility. He's an expert in his field and he uses his high-level knowledge along with his great interviewing skills to get just the right information out of the guests." Ashley, thank you for your feedback and certainly your support in tuning in. And to say thanks, be sure to get in touch over on social media and we'll get a copy of my running bestseller, now in its second revised and expanded edition, You Can Run Pain-Free, out to you in the post. Big thanks also once again to this week's show sponsor, the Gold Coast Marathon. If you are looking for a terrific event mid-year held in Australia on the beautiful Gold Coast, then do look no further than the Gold Coast Marathon. There's an event ranging from the junior dashes right through to the full-length feature marathon. It's one of my must-do events every year, and I highly encourage you to check it out. Register now over at goldcoastmarathon.com.au. Massive thanks to the 3 very good folk who make the Physical Performance Show possible each and every week. Daryl Misson, our audio engineer, Susan Wilkin on all things show administration, and Matthew Olding on all things show graphic design. Now, coming up on next week's episode of the Physical Performance Show, we keep the physical performer theme going, and I'll share with you a conversation that I recently had with former Australian swim team member, Commonwealth Games gold medalist, and World Swimming Championships medalist Megan Nay. Megan will share around the highs, the lows, and the learnings of her career, including the very difficult challenge of losing both her beloved father in a car crash and then several years later, her beloved brother Amos in a car crash just prior to her swimming the 2009 World Swimming Championships. It's a fantastic insight into a great Australian athlete, so be sure to be tuning in next week to the Physical Performance Show. Until then, keep pursuing your physical best performance. I'm Brad Beer, and this has been the Physical Performance Show.